What up, though, everybody, and welcome to Lions Nation Unite. I am Spencer Raikstraw of the Woodward Heavyweights. Appreciate you guys tapping in. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, give us a follow on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's Lions Nation Unite. It's a platform that Herman Moore created to bring different Lions content creators from all walks of life together to give you guys the best possible content and keep you up to date with all that is happening with the Detroit Lions. Also, if you want the best merch in the game, like this Packers Suck shirt, you got Packers Sucks, Bears Suck, Vikings Suck, a ton of different offerings as well, all on LionsNationUnite.com. So go get yourself some merch today. Again, appreciate you guys tapping in. I am Spencer Raikstraw of Woodward Sports. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We got a lot to talk about today because obviously OTAs came to an end in Allen Park, and Dan Campbell had a lot to say. We've already talked about Frank Ragnow and his retirement from the Detroit Lions. Obviously, that hurts Frank Ragnow, one of the best centers in the league, if not the best center in the league. And so having him retire at the age of 29 hurts the Detroit Lions, but I think we all kind of saw this one coming. Maybe not this year. Maybe you thought you had a little more runway with him, but Frank was banged up, man. He was banged up from head to toe, and he had to make the decision that was best for his health. And I thank him for everything that he's done. I thank him for everything he's done for not only the Lions, but for the city of Detroit. Frank Ragnow, a true legend in Detroit, the best center in the history of the Detroit Lions, and I wish him all the best in retirement. Dan Campbell obviously inherited Frank Ragnow. He was not one of his pieces. He was not a Brad Holmes draft pick, but he was a Dan Campbell guy nonetheless. The Grizzly man really stood for everything that Dan Campbell preaches when you talk about grit, toughness, and commitment to excellence. Now, this is what Dan Campbell had to say about Frank Ragnow after OTAs, and it's kind of a tearjerker, honestly. You hear it in Coach's voice, that how much he loves his guys, how much he loves his team. And you know Frank was the leader. He was the gray bush on that offensive line along with Taylor Decker. Here's what Coach Campbell had to say about him.
Football player, man of the community, man, he's done it all. And he would be sorely missed, man. One of the greatest memories I have of Frank was divisional against Tampa Bay, 4th and 1. We run downhill to Craig Reynolds, man, and he's got big boy. And he hits him, and he kind of hits a knee, and then he has to get back up and tie up the block. We score, man. It was huge, this type of player he was. So he'll be missed. But, man, this train goes on. Train rolls on. And it's the next man up. And so we will be ready to go when camp hits. We'll be ready to go. We got plenty of versatility up there. We like the guys that we drafted. We like our free agents that we brought in, the young guys, Kingsley being one of those guys, among others. So I got all the respect for Frank Ragnow. And, man, I love him to death. And the other thing is, quite frankly, some of this stuff about contract talk, that's disrespectful. That's not what this is ever about. So, anyway, love you, Frank.
So there it is. And you hear him get a little choked up there. And I'm glad he kind of set the record straight at the end of it when you hear him say that it was never about contract disputes. You heard it from the horse's mouth there. Dan Campbell's not going to get up on the mic and lie to you. You know that's true. And I think that was just reporters or beat reporters trying to make something out of him not being there. Oh, he's not at OTAs. Maybe he's not happy with this contract. And then you know how things spiral on Twitter and in social media. But, man, Frank Ragnow, oh, I'm going to miss that guy. Love him, but like Dan Campbell said, it's next man up with this organization. It's next man up with this regime. And Brad Holmes and him have been preparing for this. They have been loading the cupboard with interior offensive linemen because they knew this was inevitable, that Frank Ragnow was eventually going to have to leave the team. And you hear that key word there. You guys know what word I'm talking about. It's Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's favorite word, the versatility. The versatility of those guys up front, the versatility of a Tate Ratledge and a Graham Glasgow and a Miles Frazier and all of these different interior offensive linemen are going to help the Lions recoup for the loss of Frank Ragnow. So best of wishes to you, Frank. Hope you enjoy retirement, man. You surely deserved it. The thing that hurts me the most is that when this team wins the Super Bowl, Frank Ragnow is not going to be the starting center. And that's what really gets me. But okay, we got the sad stuff out of the way. I know we've talked about it a couple times, but we had to do it because you had the head coach speak on it right there, and he let everybody know, listen, this was not a contract dispute thing. It was never a contract dispute thing. Frank Ragnow, if he was healthy, is playing football. Unfortunately, he was not healthy, and that's how it goes. So wish him the best. But Dan Campbell also spoke about other guys in the OTAs that were turning heads. Different guys that he thought stood out in the OTA period. And he gives a little bit of a caveat that it is kind of the second coming of the underwear Olympics, where it's not as bad as the combine, but they're out there in pajamas running 7-on-7, so you don't really see everything. You don't have the hitting, you don't have the offensive line, but you still see what you get out of some of the guys you already know about. Some of the guys that you've seen play on this team before, are they looking sharper? Are they looking more physical? Are they looking more explosive? Here is what Coach Dan Campbell said about different players that stood out in OTAs.
I got to be careful with all that again, right? I mean, because it's the same thing. I mean, without pads, how real is it? I know this. You know, you start talking about some guys that you see development that man, guys that we're counting on, and they're at a certain place, and you wanted to feel like, man, coming out of spring, they took a step up, knowing that it's only spring. Gibbs, Jamo, you know, those are two guys that really stood out. I know this, the addition of Reed, Maddox, man, that looks good. Glad we got those guys. Man, they're going to fit right in with us. You know, so I can go down the list here, but those are a couple of guys probably that you know that I think of.
So you hear some of the names there, and obviously the two that stick out are the two probably most explosive offensive weapons in the entire NFL. When you look at Jameson Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs, these are two guys that every time they touch the ball, they can take it to the house. And Jameson Williams, I know that you guys might have called me a fanboy. You guys might have called me a slappy. You might have called me ugly. I mean, that's a different thing. But you might have called me overzealous for what I expect out of Jameson Williams next year. But I don't care. I think Jameson Williams is going to be a first-team All-Pro receiver next year. This is a guy that truly has it all, and he's got it set up for him. Johnny Morton, Scotty Montgomery, Dan Campbell, every single coach that has worked with Jameson Williams so far in the spring, you've heard the same thing from all of them. He looks different. He looks more engaged. He looks locked in. He looks stronger. And on top of not having any kind of off-season blahs this summer, and he's just going to be able to straight get to ball, and it's a contract year. And him and Jared Goff have a beautiful chemistry formed after last season, and Johnny Morton is going to feed him the rock. Johnny Morton likes explosive shots down the field. Johnny Morton likes the type of receiver that Jameson Williams is. I guarantee you Johnny Morton will feed Jameson Williams more than Ben Johnson did. This guy, Jamo, is in for some kind of season. I can't wait for it. We see him making one-on-one moves, double moves at camp already. These are things that we didn't see out of him last year. We see him with the leaping one-handed snags in pictures, rocking the number 1 jersey. It might be too far. It might be too this. It might be too that. I don't care. When you look at what Jameson Williams is, what he was drafted to be, the true potential of him, his peakest of peaks, if Jameson Williams reaches every single iota of his potential, that spot is the best wide receiver in the NFL. Now, do I think he's going to reach that? Probably not. But I think he's going to be damn close. I really do. I think Jameson Williams is going to be a top 3 receiver in the NFL next year. I think he's going to be over 1,800 all-purpose yards. I think he's going to be over 13 touchdowns, obviously both on the ground and through the air. This guy is a walking touchdown. I know Johnny Morton knows that. I know Dan Campbell knows that. I know Jared Goff knows that. They are going to feed Jamo, and defenses are going to be scared. I mentioned this on the Woodward Heavyweights on the Woodward Sports Network, 5 to 7, shout out, that he shows up in the biggest moments, whether it's the NFC Championship game where he has 2 touchdowns, whether it is last year's divisional round when Jared Goff goes down. Jared Goff knocked out of the game. You bring in Teddy Bridgewater. Who do they give the ball to? Jameson Williams. What does he do? He scores a touchdown on that play. It's all right, Goff. Take a series off. I got this. Jameson Williams steps up when he's needed the most, and this Lions schedule next year, especially on the road, has no reprieve. So I expect him to step up in these big games and be a factor of why the Lions beat a Kansas City in Kansas City, or why the Lions beat a Baltimore in Baltimore, or why the Lions beat a Philadelphia in Philadelphia. Jameson Williams steps up when it matters the most, and this season, it matters every week. I expect Jameson Williams to put on an absolute show. And Jahmyr Gibbs is Jahmyr Gibbs. We know what he is. He's Showtime. He's the best running back in the NFL. I expect Jahmyr Gibbs to put up insane numbers in this offense. I expect them to lean more towards Jahmyr Gibbs than David Montgomery next year. Now, you're still going to use David Montgomery in obviously short yardage situations, a lot of goal line work, but I expect Jahmyr Gibbs to get a bulk of the carries in between the 20s. That guy is going to be a bell cow. I believe he's the best running back in football, and if you give him the carries, he can match, if not exceed, the production that Saquon Barkley got last year. Now, he's not going to get that many carries, obviously, but I think he's going to get more than he did last year, and I think he's going to be over 2,000 all-purpose yards. And finally, you hear 2 names that you like to hear out of the secondary. You hear Avonte Maddox and you hear DJ Reed. These are 2 veterans that were brought in there. Avonte Maddox, he's going to be that floater safety third guy, whether you need to fill him in there, here or there. This is a veteran you brought in, Super Bowl pedigree, won a couple in Philadelphia. He's been around. He's a veteran. He knows what it takes to win in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. He is great to have in the back end of that young secondary. When you look at Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold, Ennis Raikstraw, all of these young players, it's good to have an old head. It's good to have Unc back there in Avonte Maddox, and he can still play pretty damn well. Expect to see him on a lot of special teams units and as that third safety in case something happens. Avonte Maddox, it's good to hear he's fitting well, and obviously we knew about DJ Reed. You know the kind of dog DJ Reed is. Well, you might not, but if you read the article that we posted on Heavyweights a while ago, DJ Reed had to claw, scratch, and bite his way to where he is now. He's talked about it coming from the Jets to the Detroit Lions, the massive difference of feel, the massive difference of what this means to them, and the actual feel of practice that Dan Campbell and these guys hold. He's already raved about all his secondary partners, calling Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph arguably the 2 best safeties in the league, saying Amik Robertson is one of the best nickels in the league, and Terrion Arnold is learning at an amazing rate. DJ Reed is going to fit right in this secondary room because it's full of dogs. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And then finally, we got one more video from Dan Campbell here. This is something I think Detroit Lions fans might have forgotten about, because you didn't just get Terrion Arnold as a cornerback in the draft last year. You got Ennis Raikstraw too. And Ennis Raikstraw in camp last year was taking a lot of opportunities away from guys on that first-team defense. He is a dog. He is a man-to-man cover corner on the outside, and he is playing like it. Here is what Dan Campbell has said about Ennis the Menace in OTAs.
Guys who seemed to stand out a little bit when we were here last week was Ennis. He had a really good training camp last year.
Ennis would be another guy that stood out, by the way. All right, you mentioned that. And Laporta had a good spring, too. But, yeah, Raikstraw certainly was another guy. Keep going, sorry.
Just where do you see him fitting in? It's a pretty crowded DB room. I know you guys like the depth, but what are the opportunities for him this year?
It's up to him. He's got an opportunity. All right, we're going to play the best guy. I mean, that's what competition is about. I mean, and the whole roster knows that. Man, if you're the best guy, we're not going to just sit there and no. It's the best guy. So he's going to have a chance to compete. We'd like to keep him outside right now and just let him go. And, he had a good spring, and there again, we're in pajamas, but he's going to get a chance to compete and see how much he's grown and what kind of production he can have for us.
Why do you want to keep him on the outside right now? What is the thinking with him?
Well, I think we tinkered with some nickel last year, and it was probably a little too much, too fast for him. And we felt like once we did some things with him outside practice, things of that, man, he really began to grow. And I think right now, that's where he really belongs. That's where he can really take off. And, the other thing, we still, between Amik, you got Branch, you got Maddox. Like, we've got some guys that can play nickel. Reed can play nickel, So I think right now that'd be the plan, and just let him take off.
Ennis Raikstraw taking a year two, if you want to call it a year two leap, would be extremely huge for this defense. This is a guy who, like Dan Campbell said, he lives on the outside. They tried to get him in nickel snaps last year because he was doing so well in camp that they're like, all right, we got to get this dude on the field somehow. We got to get him with the first team somehow. So they were giving him snaps at nickel, but make no mistake about it, he is an outside man coverage cornerback. He is long, he is lengthy, he has great ball skills, and he is just an absolute dog. So if Ennis the Menace can come out here and take a spot away from somebody in camp, ooh, man, that defense starts to look pretty nasty. I've said it before on the Woodward Heavyweights, 5-7 on Woodward Sports, that Ennis Raikstraw could be a guy that we see starting alongside Terrion Arnold. Obviously, that DJ Reed signing kind of threw a wrench into that, but I think the plan that Brad Holmes had was to draft those two guys and have them be your starting outside cornerbacks going forward. Now, Ennis, DJ Reed, Terrion Arnold, Amik Robertson when he comes back. Obviously, the two safeties, there's only so many spots that they can fill. There's only so many spots that they can play at one time. But if there is one thing that we know about this regime, when you look at Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, he said it there himself, the best man plays. It doesn't matter what you got paid, DJ Reed, to come in here. It doesn't matter where you were drafted, Terrion Arnold, in the first round. If Ennis Raikstraw is the best player, Ennis Raikstraw is going to be getting those snaps. Now, that I love, because that makes dogs go harder, and every single one of those cornerbacks is a dog. And man, Lions fans, we thought this was going to be a cool, calm, collected training camp, everything sorted out, but now with Frank Ragnow retiring and a shakeup in the interior offensive line, and Ennis Raikstraw emerging as a guy trying to get first team snaps, there are going to be some battles at camp, and Dan Campbell loves that. Training camp is going to be wired for the Detroit Lions with a couple jobs that we might not have thought were up for grabs. Appreciate you guys tapping in. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to Lions Nation Unite, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X. Go to lionsnationunite.com to get some of this merch. And I'll say it right now before we get out of here. I expect the interior offensive line, I expect Graham Glasgow to start at center. This is week 1. I expect Tate Ratledge to start at right guard, and I expect Christian Mahogany to start at left guard. And then when you look at the cornerbacks, I don't know if Amik Robertson will be ready to go week 1. I just don't. I am going to say I expect Terrion Arnold and Ennis Raikstraw to play the outside with DJ Reed in the slot week 1 for the Detroit Lions. Let's hear your thoughts. Drop some comments. Let me know who you got starting in the defensive backfield and in the interior offensive line for the Detroit Lions. Drop those comments in the chat. Smash the like button. Appreciate you guys tapping in. We'll see you later. I am Spencer Raikstraw of Woodward Sports. This is Lions Nation Unite. Peace.